Hi, I'm Dr. Frank Bartolomeo, Director of Adolescent Services at Silver Hill Hospital, a private psychiatric hospital in New Canaan, Connecticut. I'm going to talk to you today about underage drinking and in particular binge drinking. If you're an adolescent and you're watching this, you know that you're going to receive a tremendous amount of pressure to engage or to use a couple of substances that have historically been used in this country for adolescents. So it's alcohol or cannabis. And this is going to become part of something you're going to be exposed to, and you have to be prepared to deal with that. What I want to do is give you some information about underage drinking, in particular binge drinking, what the risks are, what the consequences can be, and a reason for waiting for as long as you can. So when we talk to adults who are addicted to alcohol, nicotine, or other drugs, 9 out of 10 of them began using those substances as an adolescent, before the age of 18. 9 out of 10. And what we know is that the earlier they started using any of those substances, the greater chance they had of becoming addicted. In fact, if you use any of those substances before the age of 18, you have about a 1 in 4 chance of becoming addicted. Now, why is that? By now, you've all heard in your science classes about the adolescent brain and how it's going through a period of construction. It's going through a major growth period, peaking at around age 15, where your brain is essentially being wired and rewired. And it's wired in part based on experience and based on what your brain is actually being exposed to, experientially and substance-wise. So we know that the adolescent brain reacts to alcohol differently. Alcohol is depressant and it slows down functioning. So let me just define for a second what binge drinking is. So binge drinking is defined as, for a male, 5 or more drinks in a 2-hour period of time. 5 or more drinks. For females, it's 4 drinks in a 2-hour period of time. And what we know from college students is that 40% of them are binge drinking on a regular basis, and 80% have been binge drinking over the course of the year. So binge drinking is particularly dangerous because it has a number of consequences. So one, besides the risk of addiction, there's the risk of alcohol poisoning, car accidents, injuries, and accidental deaths. So people who drive under the influence are at risk of getting into car accidents, also a risk of other kinds of non-fatal injuries, fall injuries. Sometimes there's violence, particularly between males, often involved alcohol, and in a number of sexual assaults, alcohol is involved. So there's some of the consequences of binge drinking. Another one is that it really affects brain functioning. And some research that was done at Duke University looked at parts of the brains of people who binge drink. And what they found was that the hippocampus, which is a part of the brain that plays a huge role in learning and memory, that the size of the hippocampi for those binge drinkers was about 10% smaller than non-binge drinkers. So the researcher concluded that if you're binge drinking on a regular basis, it's like a self-induced learning disability. It's affecting your ability to learn and retain information. So the other major risk of binge drinking is alcohol poisoning. And alcohol poisoning does cause deaths. In fact, it may cause more deaths than all of the other drugs in the country. So alcohol poisoning essentially involves the brain and body's inability to metabolize alcohol, so that as a depressant, it literally begins to shut down parts of the brain, starting from the front forward. And when it begins to affect part of the brain, the back here, can literally start shutting down systems that are responsible for your breathing, blood pressure, those kinds of things. So alcohol poisoning can and does kill kids. So there are a lot of reasons to wait. If you can wait, for example, to the age of 21 before drinking, your chance of becoming addicted to alcohol changes from 1 in 4 to 1 in 25. So that's a good reason to wait for as long as you can, and you'll have to deal with the pressure of peers who are wanting you to get involved in that activity. So those are very difficult choices to make. So thank you for listening to me. Bye-bye.